You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Imagine a world where you're always one step ahead of cyber threats, where your defenses are impenetrable because you see what others don't. Welcome to Team Cymru's Threat Intelligence Solutions. With real-time access to the world's largest threat intelligence data ocean, they enable you to turn the tables on attackers. Transform your security from reactive to proactive through accelerated threat hunting and incident response, made possible through automation. Empower your team with visibility and insights to start defending your organization like never before. Team Cymru. Be the hunter, not the hunted. Learn more at team-cymru.com/cyberwire. That's team-cymru.com/cyberwire.
Attackers lock up Azure accounts with MFA. Bank of America alerts customers to a third-party data breach. Malicious cyber activity targets elections worldwide. CISA highlights a vulnerability in Roundcube Webmail. Lawmakers introduce a bipartisan bill to enhance healthcare security. Siemens and Schneider Electric address multiple industrial vulnerabilities. Perception and tech gender parity still has a long way to go. Dave Bittner speaks with guest Andrew Scott, Associate Director of China Operations at CISA, and Brett Leatherman, Section Chief for Cyber at the FBI, about Chinese threat actor Volt Typhoon and the scourge of online obituary spam. Today is February 13th, 2024. I'm not Dave Bittner, but Trey Hester, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. An ongoing campaign is targeting hundreds of Microsoft Azure accounts, including those of senior executives, aiming to steal data and financial assets. Security firm Proofpoint discovered the attackers use sophisticated phishing techniques to compromise Azure environments, affecting a broad spectrum of roles globally. Once they gain access, attackers secure accounts with multi-factor authentication to hinder password changes or access review by victims. Post-compromise actions include data exfiltration, internal and external phishing for lateral movement, financial fraud attempts, and creating mailbox rules to hide malicious activities. The attackers use proxies to match their IP's geographical location with their targets and employ compromised domains and data hosting services to obfuscate their operations. Indicators of compromise involve specific user agents and domains, with some proxy services tracing back to Russia and Nigeria, though no specific threat actor has been identified by Proofpoint. Organizations are advised to monitor user agents and source domains for signs of compromise and employ security defenses against both initial and post-compromise activities. Bank of America has alerted its customers to a data breach at Infosys McCamish Systems, a service provider, exposing personal information like names, social security numbers, and financial details of potentially 57,000 individuals. The breach, attributed to a cybersecurity event in November 2023, led to unauthorized access to IMS systems but did not compromise Bank of America's own systems. The Lockbit ransomware gang claimed responsibility for encrypting over 2,000 IMS systems during the breach. This incident is part of a larger trend of cyber attacks by Lockbit, which has targeted numerous organizations worldwide since 2019. Additionally, financial information of Bank of America customers was also exposed in a separate breach of the MoveIt transfer platform by the Klopp cybercrime gang in May of 2023. Infosys, the parent company of IMS, has yet to comment on the breach. Security firm Security reports a significant uptake in malicious cyber activities aimed at influencing sovereign elections globally. 2024 has seen an unprecedented number of voters participating in elections across 64 countries, including a pivotal U.S. presidential election. This cyber activity, which has doubled since the previous analysis period, targets nations worldwide, aiming to disrupt democratic processes and manipulate public opinion through cyber espionage and the dissemination of targeted propaganda. Threat actors driven by profit, ideology, or under the direction of nation-states seek to undermine the integrity of elections by exploiting leaked voter data and personal information. Resecurity emphasizes the urgent need for robust identity protection measures to safeguard the democratic process against evolving cyber threats and foreign interference campaigns. CISA has alerted users to an actively exploited cross-site scripting vulnerability in the Roundcube Webmail, identified by Zscaler researcher Niraj Shivtarka, with a CVSS score of 6.1. This flaw threatens to expose sensitive data via malicious links in plain text emails. This issue on September 15th of last year affects a widely used PHP-based IMAP email client compatible with various web servers and databases. Over 132,000 Roundcube servers are publicly accessible online, raising concerns about potential security risks. CISA has urged vendors to apply mitigations or discontinue using vulnerable versions to protect against this security threat. U.S. lawmakers are introducing a bipartisan bill aimed at enhancing cybersecurity in the healthcare sector amidst a surge of cyber attacks. The Strengthening Cybersecurity in Healthcare Act, proposed by Senators Angus King and Marco Rubio, mandates the Department of Health and Human Services to conduct biennial cybersecurity reviews and tests of its IT systems. This requirement comes in response to the department's management of data for 65 million Medicare patients and the record 734 breaches reported in 2023, affecting over 135 million people. The bill seeks to update HHS's cybersecurity strategy to address evolving threats, requiring biannual reports to Congress on progress and plans. Siemens and Schneider Electric have released 18 security advisories addressing a combined total of 275 vulnerabilities for their industrial products. Siemens Advisories covers 270 vulnerabilities across various products, including Scalent switches, the Synec Industrial Network Management Solution, and several others, with most issues rated as critical or high severity. These factors could lead to arbitrary code execution, denial of service attacks, or information disclosure, with updates available for most affected products. Schneider Electric's 3 advisories detail 5 vulnerabilities in products like EcoStruxure Control Expert and Harmony Relay NFC, addressing issues such as unauthorized access to PLCs and unauthentication bypass. Siemens is also implementing CVSS 4.0 severity ratings. An article in Euronews outlines that despite 80% of men in the tech industry believing in gender parity, women in tech challenge this perception, pointing out structural challenges and biases that still exist. A survey by recruitment company Nigel Frank International revealed that only a small fraction of men disagree with the notion that there is currently gender equality in tech, contrasting sharply with women's experiences of sexism and inequality in the workplace. The issue extends to venture funding, where women founders face significant hurdles due to the male-dominated investor landscape. Recommendations for improvement include hiring and properly compensating women, calling out sexism, ensuring inclusive decision-making, and increasing the presence of women in senior and investor roles to combat deep-rooted gender biases and foster equality in the tech industry. Coming up after the break, Dave Bittner sits down with CISA's Andrew Scott and the FBI's Brett Leatherman. They share the latest joint advisory from their respective agencies on the People's Republic of China and Volt Typhoon and offer some living off the land guidance. Stick around.
Hey everybody, I want to take a few minutes here and talk about our sponsor, Splunk. You know, you need to keep operations humming around the clock, but potential disruptions are everywhere. Splunk helps you predict problems and find and fix issues fast, so you can reduce risk and ditch downtime. The world's largest enterprises rely on Splunk's unified security and observability platform to become more efficient, resilient, and innovative. With Splunk, you can react quickly, evolve faster, and be ready for anything. Stay ahead of disruptions. Learn more at splunk.com/resilience. Struggling to secure on-prem apps with modern identity? Don't worry, you're not alone. Join industry leaders from Fortune 500 organizations to secure your apps on any cloud with any IDP, regardless of your environment's complexity. Meet Strata's identity orchestration platform, Mavericks. Say goodbye to the headaches of app refactoring and legacy tech debt. With identity orchestration, you can modernize legacy apps to use MFA or passwordless authentication in a few weeks, migrate from one IDP to another, and so much more without changing the app. No matter your IAM use case, Strata extends the value of your current identity investments. And the best part? You can try it for free today. Visit strata.io/cyberwire to share your biggest identity challenge, and they'll hook you up with a complimentary pair of AirPods Pro. Don't miss out. Visit strata.io/cyberwire. That's strata.io/cyberwire. The Chinese threat actor Volt Typhoon has been top of mind for cybersecurity professionals in the federal government, with recent testimony from both FBI Director Christopher Wray and CISA Director Jen Easterly highlighting the degree to which Volt Typhoon and China represent a capable and persistent threat. Joining me today are experts from both the FBI and CISA. Andrew Scott is Associate Director for China Operations at CISA, and Brett Leatherman is Acting Deputy Assistant for FBI Cyber Operations. Brett, let me start with you. Can you give us some of the backstory and current state of things when it comes to Volt Typhoon?
So in December 2023 and January 2024, the FBI conducted a technical operation pursuant to warrants issued out of U.S. District Court under Rule 41 authorities. The warrants authorized the FBI to seize and remove malware associated with the KV botnet from compromised small office, home office routers, often referred to as SOHO routers, located throughout the United States. SOHO devices are typically used by private citizens or small businesses who have limited IT and security resources. The KV botnet malware was unlikely to be identified and mitigated by these device owners. So the FBI technical operation really leveraged commands native to the botnet itself to delete the malware from the SOHO devices. It also prevented the device from being reinfected by stopping further communications between those devices and the botnet's command and control infrastructure. It's important to note that we didn't actually patch these devices or make persistent changes to the devices themselves. What we did was we prevented the device from further communicating with the actor's infrastructure. Those changes really are non-persistent, and really they can be removed by the device owner with a simple reboot of the device. That's why we went public with the Joint Cybersecurity Advisory to help the public to understand exactly what the Volt Typhoon actors were using these devices for and how they can better mitigate the threats to the U.S. in general by allowing these end-of-life devices to stay on their networks.
Andrew, can you give us some details from CISA's perspective of who we're dealing with here? I mean, what should we know about Volt Typhoon, what they're up to, and who's behind it?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So I would just build off of my colleague at FBI's answer to wind the clock back a little less than a year to last spring when CISA, many of our U.S. government partners and international partners released a cybersecurity advisory highlighting Volt Typhoon's use of living off the land techniques to hide on victim networks. Subsequent to that advisory, over the course of the intervening months, CISA then worked extensively with our industry partners to identify potential victims of Volt Typhoon activity, which is, our belief is the PRC state-sponsored activity, and identify and provide victim support to multiple entities across multiple sectors. And as a result of our incident response activities, what we've determined is that those actors have compromised the IT environments of multiple critical infrastructure organizations in the United States, primarily in communications, energy, transportation, water, and wastewater. And so last week, CISA, FBI, and a number of our partners issued an updated cybersecurity advisory, really highlighting and emphasizing the concerns, the risk, and issuing guidance that industry partners can use to help harden their networks and improve their defenses.
Can we go into some of the details here? What are the recommendations that your organizations have put out there?
So I think what we're seeing here is a use of what we call living off the land tradecraft. What that means is that these actors are using native tools on the network to sort of imitate basic user behavior. And so what they're doing is compromising the identity and credentials for just regular users on these networks to include administrators, and then using that access to maintain access in the environment, which would allow them to do all kinds of malicious activity if they chose to do so. So a couple of the pieces of guidance that we're really emphasizing: prioritizing patching your internet-facing systems and vulnerabilities that are known to be exploited by the Chinese or other actors. CISA offers the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities database as a key service that we offer to help folks figure out what to patch. Implementing phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication to ensure that your credentials can't be stolen through just regular spear phishing technique. And really ensuring that logging is turned on and that centralized logging is stored so that if you're concerned about the kind of activity that we're highlighting, you have the ability to find it on your network and determine how to take defensive measures.
Brett, how about from the FBI's perspective?
Yeah, I would just add a couple, thoughts on that, covered by both the Joint Cybersecurity Advisory as well as kind of our prior recommendations. In addition to what Andrew said, we would recommend that organizations, where able, build network and host baselines. When an adversary like Volt Typhoon are trying to hide within the network, it's important to understand what those anomalies are to behavior on the network. And so building a baseline, understanding how your network operates is important because the adversary has a vested interest in understanding how your network deviates as well and to staying within that. I would also say that in the cyber defense world, we've often talked about, the importance of inventory in our hardware and not having hardware out there that we don't know is network administrators. Those are points of vulnerability. This demonstrates it's also important to have software inventories to understand what software is being used within our environment, especially those tools that can be used to live off the land by the actors, and either disable tools that we're not using or build appropriate safeguards in place with those tools. And this also demonstrates the importance of retiring end-of-life devices. As network cybersecurity professionals, we're taught to patch whenever vulnerabilities are exposed. This demonstrates that end-of-life devices, there are no patches available. And at that point, they become vulnerable to exploitation. And it's really important that we retire those devices and bring new devices into our environment, which are built with security as a baseline to them.
Brett, I'm curious, you mentioned at the outset the activity from the FBI of going in to help secure these end-of-life devices. What sort of thing goes on in terms of notifying the owners here, and what has the response been from industry so far?
Yeah, that's an important point. When we operate via Rule 41, we are conducting a law enforcement operation, which requires at the conclusion notification to victims. And we want to do that. We partner with victims to help them build resiliency in their networks. One thing that we are big advocates of here in the FBI is that cybersecurity is national security. And this operation demonstrates that we all play a vital role in protecting our national interests, whether you're a small business, medium business, or otherwise an individual or large business. Your data, your information is important to the adversary and can have impact on the national security, but also your systems are vulnerable and can have an impact as well. So after this operation concluded, we conducted victim notification to hundreds of endpoint victims who were compromised, in some cases directly, and in some cases through the internet service providers that they were riding on top of, and provided them with some context around what the operation was, who was utilizing their devices, and how to better protect those devices in the future.
Andrew, I'm curious as we look forward here. I mean, Volt Typhoon, presumably coming out of China, I think we can assume that they are well funded and will probably be persistent. This won't be the last that we see of them. What sort of things should we look for moving forward to help mitigate what could be the next wave of activity from this group?
Thanks for that. I think what I'd offer is thinking about this not as waves of activity, but persistent, ongoing action. If you look back at what the Director of National Intelligence highlighted in the Unclassified Annual Threat Assessment from 2023, she talked about the fact that the PRC sort of sees cyber as a key means of achieving its military objectives in the event of a crisis or conflict with the United States. And so from CISA's perspective, what we're deeply concerned about is that we're seeing these actors burrow into our critical infrastructure to maintain access in the event that they ultimately choose to take more disruptive or destructive activity. And so what that means is really that this should be seen as a call to collective action for government, for industry partners in the cybersecurity field, and for critical infrastructure owners and operators. And so I'd highlight a couple of things here. The first, every victim of a cyber incident should report it to CISA and FBI every time. Because as Brett just noted, cybersecurity is national security, and a threat to one could result in a threat to many. The second is really encouraging every critical infrastructure entity to establish a relationship with their local CISA team and enroll in the free services that we have, like vulnerabilities scanning, where we can help entities understand the risks that they have on their network and repair the vulnerabilities that are being exploited by Chinese actors. The third I'd highlight is that every critical infrastructure entity, really outside of the cyber dimension of this, doubling down on a commitment to resilience, expecting and preparing for potential attacks in the future, testing and exercising the continuity of their critical systems, to ensure that they can operate through disruption and that they can recover rapidly. But really, everything that I just highlighted is only achievable if CEOs, boards, and every leader of a critical infrastructure organization recognizes and treats cyber risk as core business risk and recognize that managing them is both a matter of good governance and national security.
Brett, anything to add to that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I think China represents the broadest, most active, and persistent cyber threat to the United States today. And last week on the Hill, the FBI director tried to give everybody a sense of the scale of the Chinese cyber threat by indicating that if all FBI cyber agents and all our cyber intelligence analysts focus solely on China and not ransomware, Iran, Russia, or other cyber threats, the Chinese hackers would still outnumber the FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1. And I think that most, if not all, Americans at this point are tracking the persistent threat that China poses in the realm of cyber espionage to us today. But what many Americans may not be tracking quite as closely is that they are pre-positioning, in some cases, its enormous hacking enterprise, again, 50 to 1, to give themselves the ability to physically wreak havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of their choosing. And this demonstrates that the PRC is willing to compromise IT environments, information technology environments, to potentially target operational technology or OT environments within critical infrastructure to deploy capabilities at a time of their choosing. So I think, us remaining conscious about that, continuing to partner across the U.S. government and in private sector will help us to best defend against those kind of attacks in the future.
So, Brett, when I talk to folks in the FBI, one of the things that comes up over and over again is this idea of proactively starting a relationship, with your local FBI field office, but also being able to communicate online. What are the best ways for folks to do that?
Yeah, appreciate that question, Dave. We recommend, number one, like you indicated, that folks build a relationship with their local FBI field office. We have 56 field offices across the United States, a forward deployed workforce. And within every company's area, there is an FBI office and there is a cyber task force there. And we encourage folks to build a relationship in advance of a breach with that field office and to report any breach or anomaly with that field office. We bring, along with our partners at CISA, tremendous intelligence to bear to victim organizations, and we prioritize victim engagement, remediation, mitigation, along with our partners at CISA on a regular basis. And if an organization suffers a breach, in addition to reaching out to their local FBI field office, they're always welcome to provide information via IC3, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, and they can reach that at www.ic3.gov.
Andrew, how do folks get in touch with CISA?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I'd start by just noting, as Brett just said, CISA and FBI work very closely and jointly, both here at the headquarters elements in Washington as well as out in the field. So for CISA, we similarly, although not at the scale of FBI, have regional personnel deployed around the country that provide physical security and cybersecurity support and assistance to critical infrastructure and any other entity in the sector that is interested and needs support. So would encourage, just as Brett noted, reporting through the FBI field office, but also to CISA, where any anomalous cyber activity or incident can be reported 24/7 to report@cisa.gov or by our phone number at 1-888-282-0870.
All right. Well, Andrew Scott is Associate Director for China Operations at CISA, and Brett Leatherman is Acting Deputy Assistant for FBI Cyber Operations. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
And finally, Mia Sato reports for The Verge about the ghoulish trend of online obituary spam. In late December of 2023, Brian Vastog was shocked to find fake obituaries online claiming both he and his late partner, Beth Mazur, had died. While Mazur did pass away on December 21st of 2023, Vastog was very much alive, contrary to the misleading reports spread by several spammy websites. These sites exploited Mazur's death for clicks, using SEO tactics to appear at the top of Google search results. The misinformation, suspected to be generated by AI tools, included over a dozen sites and YouTube videos impacting Vastog and friends deeply. This case highlights the broader issue of obituary scraping, where low-quality, often inaccurate obituaries are published at scale, sometimes even affecting private individuals not in the public eye. Despite efforts to correct the record, platforms like Google struggle to manage the deluge of such deceitful content, underscoring the challenges in combating digital information and respecting the deceased's legacy. So here's to looking forward to the day where we can write the obituary for this kind of despicable online misinformation. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. Your feedback helps us ensure we're delivering the information and insights that help keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is me, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producers are Jennifer Iben and Brandon Karp. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Trey Hester, filling in for Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
This episode is made possible in part by RSA Conference, where the world talks security. Through global events and year-round content, RSAC connects you to cybersecurity leaders and cutting-edge ideas for a safer, more secure future. Learn more at rsaconference.com/cyberwire23.